Okay, this is investigation 10C, the primary document analysis. So let's take a look at the directions. We're going to use the primary documents in the graphic organizer analysis grid to collect and categorize evidence that will directly respond to the prompt and support the argument you construct. You've done this 9 times prior. This is the 10th time for primary document analysis. Remember the overall prompt we've been investigating, in which you need to pull evidence from the stories of people who were there, the primary stories today. To what extent, to a great extent or to a lesser extent, big or little, did the transatlantic slave trade impact the lives of Africans in the old world, Africa, and the new world, Americas? To what extent? Okay, so what I need you to do now is open up the transatlantic slave grid. And you can also open up the DBQ. Just put it to the side because you're going to work with Mr. D. I'm going to open it up, split your screen with me, and it should look like this. DBQ focus, the Atlantic slave trade. Here we are. Now, what's distinct about this investigation, as I'm waiting for you to split your screen, is the perspective of the people involved in this situation. Okay? You don't just have rich slave owners and the enslaved who are being, the African enslaved who are being dehumanized. You have people in the middle. And that complicates things with perspective. It's very easy to say, well, the rich slave owner who's buying and dehumanizing these slaves, from a moral perspective, you can say that's immoral and wrong. And you can argue it's evil from a moral perspective. And then from the African perspective, you can say, you know, that they're being dehumanized, right? And their pain and suffering, that's also wrong from a moral perspective. I want you to try to figure out the point of view of the people in the middle, is where it becomes more complicated and complex. Okay, so now your screen should look like my screen. I'm going to scroll with me. So our historical context, I'm going to read here. So as the kings, explorers, and business financiers had hoped, the Americas were full of opportunities to make money. Gold, silver, and other minerals could be mined, and tobacco, sugar, and other crops could be grown on plantations. In order to make use of these resources, there would have to be reliable supply of laborers to do the work. If you're a small business owner, you have dreams of becoming rich by buying huge farms and combining them into something called plantations. You need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of workers in the Americas, and you don't have any. Where do you get those laborers? The Native American population had dwindled due to disease and war and did not provide enough labor. However, the Europeans had access to another cheap labor market that already existed, the African slave trade. While the use of slaves had existed in societies for a millennia, remember we talked about this, indentured servitude in Europe, Africa, and Asia, the prisoner of war style of labor in Africa and Asia. In Europe, there was serfdom, where you're tied to the land and you have to listen to the lord of the manor. It was not until the mid-15th century that Europeans began trading and capturing slaves from Africa, just in time for the discovery of the Americas. Between 1450 and 1870, over 10 million humans were taken from Africa. Okay? So now let's see, to what extent did the transatlantic slave trade impact the lives of Africans in the old world, Africa, and the new world, the Americas? We have 10 short documents that you're going to spend the next few days working on, where you're going to gather evidence and use it to make a great, compelling argument that addresses this prompt. Okay? Let's go to document 1. Document 1. Who is the author creator? So we have Merrick Whitcomb, The Gold of the Indies, 1559. You want to copy that? Merrick Whitcomb, The Gold of the Indies, and you want to paste it. This is our who. Okay? The occasion, the time and the place. As we read, you'll understand that the story is being told from the Americas to people who live in Spain and Europe. So you want to say the time and the place is coming from the Americas. This is what's going on. In 1559, a letter about Spain's interactions with its colonies. You can even copy and paste that. That's just very easy to do. Here you go. And there's your occasion. Now there's something new under occasion while you're copying and pasting. It says point of view. What is the perspective of the speaker? Is this coming from the eyes, through the eyes of a slave? Is this story coming through the eyes of a slave owner? Is this coming through the eyes of a ship worker? Is this coming, a slave ship worker? Is this coming through the eyes of another person? Okay, we need to figure it out. I'm even going to put another category here. Catholic priest. There's a chance that could be true. Let's find out. Get ready. This is a letter about Spain's interactions in 1559 with its colonies, the Americas. From New Spain are obtained gold. Remember Hernan Cortez, right? What they discovered. From New Spain are obtained gold, silver, and other things. 1/5 of all profits go to the king. So 1 out of every 5 of the profits, the money you make goes to the king. Great quantities of gold and silver used to be out in the open. With all of it gone, now gold and silver has to be mined, dug out of the ground. The work is hard and Spaniards are not willing to do the work. Natives who have become Christians are now not allowed to be forced to do the work because the emperor freed them. So now it is necessary to acquire Negro slaves, which at that time meant enslaved Africans, who are brought from the coast of Africa. Their masters are making them work too hard and giving them too little to eat. They fall sick and the greater part of them die. Now, if I was a student, I just read that. Who is the point of view here? Is this coming from a slave? Well, the slave wouldn't understand the greater context of the story, right? Is this coming from a slave owner? Well, would a slave owner say their masters are making them work too hard? No, right? A slave owner would be the person making them work too hard. Is this coming from a slave ship where there's no evidence here of being on a boat, right? Is this coming from a Catholic priest? Well, this individual says natives who have become Christians are not allowed forced to do the work because the emperor freed them. So there's a chance it's a Catholic priest, or it could be another person. So look what I said. The point of view is definitely somebody that's Spanish, not Native American or African. I would say a Spanish non-slave owner. The story is coming through the eyes of a Spanish non-slave owner. And the perspective is of the slave trade from the Americas. Looking at them in the Americas, right? Looking at what's going on. This person thinks it's morally wrong. So there's a strong chance it's a Catholic priest who's coming from the moral perspective. Now we're looking deep, we're digging deep, and we're looking at the point of view. You have to climb into these stories and try to figure out whose eyes are these stories coming from. Okay? And you gain depth and complexity in your analysis. Wow, that's how you score high on the PSATs in the reading and writing sections. Tip. Okay? Purpose. Why do you think the sources were created? To inform, to persuade, to entertain? let's say to inform people in Spain how and why Africans are being treated so poorly. Natives who've become Christians, they're not allowed to be forced to do the work. So enslaved Africans are being brought from the coast of Africa over here to the New World, and their masters are making them work too hard and giving them too little to eat. They fall sick and they die. That is the how and the why, to inform people in Spain how and why Africans are being treated poorly. This is to imply it's morally wrong that somebody in Spain needs to do something about this. So once again, that lends us to believe it might be a Christian monk coming from a moral perspective. This is what you're looking for in future documents, okay? Now, what is the subject or the meaning? To inform people in Europe and in Spain of the dehumanization of Africans in the Americas. That corroborates our research, that corroborates our image analysis. It all matches. This is pointing very close to the truth of what really happened there. The dehumanization. To strip a human being of the characteristics that makes them human. Dehumanization. Okay? So that's what you should have there. So now we need document quote that proves the argument. And there we have it highlighted in blue. You copy it and you paste it in there. So now it's necessary to acquire Negro and African slaves who are brought from the coast of Africa. Their masters are making them work too hard, giving them little to eat, and they fall sick and the greater part of them die. That is the direct evidence out of the mouth of somebody who was there, that we can use to construct a strong, credible argument, which responds to the prompt as to what extent Africans were impacted by the transatlantic slave trade. Well, here's a great piece of evidence. They were enslaved by European Spanish. Their masters made them work too hard, gave them little to eat, and most of them died in this particular area in 1559. Okay? Let's move on to primary document 2, and then I'll release you to work on the rest. Primary document 2. Ofoboa Kugano describes his capture into slavery. Right away, we know this is the perspective, the point of view is through the eyes of an African slave. Okay? So, whoops. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it here, the speaker. Okay, and as you read, you're going to understand that this starts in Africa, but we don't know the date, so we're going to say during transatlantic slave trade. Okay, make sure you have that. The point of view, we know this is through the eyes of an African slave. Okay. So now we're getting two different point of views. One that is most likely a Spanish monk in document 1. He's a Christian Spanish monk. And now document 2, we have the perspective or point of view of an African slave. All right, now why does he say these words? Let's read together. I was early snatched away from my native country with about 18 or 20 more boys and girls as we were playing in a field. We lived but a few days' journey from the coast, where we were kidnapped and consigned to Granada, Spain. We were soon led out of the way which we knew, and towards evening, as we came in sight of a town, I was soon conducted to a prison. He's put in a prison for 3 days, where I heard the groans and cries of many and saw some of my fellow captives. But when a vessel, a boat, a ship, arrived to conduct us away, okay, a smaller boat, a vessel, arrived to take us away to the larger ship, it was a most horrible scene. There was nothing to be heard but the rattling of chains, smacking of whips, and the groans and cries of our fellow men. Some would not stir from the ground when they were lashed and beat in the most horrible manner. All right. So what is the purpose here? To inform the reader of the Spanish treatment, Spanish slave owner treatment of captured Africans. Or enslaved Africans. Okay? He wants to tell us what happened. He wants to tell us his story, this individual. So this is to inform us, okay? So what is really the message here? To describe dehumanization of enslaved Africans. Okay? So now we need a quote that reflects dehumanization. And I would take this whole quote right here. Sorry. And there you go. Okay? But it was a vessel, but when a vessel arrived to conduct us away to the larger ship, it was a most horrible scene. And the words that follow reflect dehumanization. So now you have two strong pieces of evidence from two different perspectives which match up and corroborate. Corroborate means match. The evidence agrees. It matches up, like in the court of law. Okay? Now what you want to do is you want to finish documents 3 through 10.